Good morning. And if you haven't already noticed, I already have my pre-workout made. Now keep in mind, I'm actually going to the gym, not the fitness center, because I feel as though when I have my pre-workout drank before I even get into the car, it's less tempting for me to waste time in my car and just sipping on my pre-workout as I'm waiting for the finishing of said pre-workout. And I don't want to waste time, because time is limited. And we got things to do today. I say that as if there's like a bunch of things to get done. I mean, there's a few things. Like I got a couple checks I got to cash out. But outside of that, today is back day at the gym. As everyone knows, that's my favorite day. And I'm wearing my Punisher shirt because the Punisher is my favorite comic book character of all time. This isn't going to be my gym shirt, and this isn't, quite frankly, going to be the shirt I wear throughout the day. It's going to be something different because this was actually my pajama shirt for the night. But anyway, I am waiting for more medication for Jirki to come in. It's not like medication. It's more just cream to put on her so that way she has a nice, healthy coat, which I'm excited for. And more stuff to add to her food to give her a little bit more nutrition. Because we all know that when you get stuff from the store and things like that, some of the nutritional values are already blocked out. But outside of that, though, we're going to have a more relaxed day. I do have an acting class a little bit later, and I'm excited because I do have a Sunday off, so that's going to be fun. And outside of that, yeah, today's going to be more of a relaxed day, not too much. I do want to do some stuff outside because it's gorgeous. Finally have a day off when it's nice out. Took long enough. Freaking May was just April all over again. April showers bring May flowers. Yeah, well, May was still showering. I mean, it's nice to get a free shower because with these water bills, am I right, my friends? But anyway, let me finish this pre-workout and we're going to get to the gym and we're going to slam some back. That almost sounded unchristian. But anyways, I got to get on the bounce. I'll catch you guys in a minute. I don't even remember when I started doing this.
So this topic is less fun, but I still think it's an important topic to talk about, and that is the idea of money discipline. And what do I mean by this? I think everyone knows what I mean when I say money discipline. It's the idea of even if you're getting more money, you shouldn't just waste that more money. Because I feel like a lot of people get into the nasty habit of they'll get money as like a bonus, a gift, or they put in some extra hours at work and they kind of just throw it away. They'll buy a bunch of stuff that they don't need and call it a day. Now, unless you're making a bunch of money from your job, the idea of money discipline needs to be more brought in and set in stone, because I just made some extra money from an acting gig, right? Put it into the bank, and I did buy something that I didn't have yet. I bought the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, the Wrath of the Mutants, I think that's what it's called, or Mutants Unleashed. Mutants Unleashed, that's it. And the reason I got it is because, like I said, I got some bonus money, and it was only $12, but that was my gift to myself. I also got a bonus for working through Memorial Day weekend. And I don't plan on just wasting that money on a bunch of video games and movies. And this is a discipline that I'm starting to get myself figured out properly now. Because I used to be the same way. I'd be like, oh, I just made a bunch of extra money. I'm just going to waste that extra money on, supplements, video games, movies, and things like that. And then not even think about it because like, oh, my full-time job can cover the rest of the expenses. When that bonus money or extra money should be saved and should be used properly. Learn how to save it because you never know when you might need that money for a rainy day, or possibly learn how to invest.
I am back home from the gym, and it's actually a few hours later because my friend and I had to do a quick impromptu audition for a movie, and that was pretty fun. A little stressful, obviously, but also a lot of fun. So that's why I'm wearing this V-neck as opposed to the shirt I wanted to wear throughout the day. But I think I look good in this, to be honest. So no harm there. Anyway, I still have to make my post-workout snack. I didn't get a chance to make that immediately afterwards because I was in a rush to get that audition done. Mostly because he was the only reader I could get, and he was only available to a certain point, and we had to get it done. The video itself isn't rushed, but I had to rush quickly to get it started and recorded. But anyway, that was a great back workout. Short and sweet and to the point. I definitely feel the pump now. I think I'm learning more and more that you don't need a lot of time, you just need quality time. And I do love those pause holds too. Loving those a lot more and doing them a lot. Even though, as you saw with the pull-ups, I did them a lot quicker as opposed to last week when I was doing much more slower. Every now and again, I like to do more explosive reps because to get those, similar to like when you train in martial arts, things like that, a lot of explosive power goes into that. So never hurts to train that as well. Anyway, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? I don't know, but I have an apple here and I definitely want to eat this.
Some good fucking food.
I do have an acting class later. Before then, though, I definitely want to go out and explore the day a little bit. Maybe take my shirt off and do some tanning.
There's no rules!
Listen to some music as I walk around the neighborhood. I want to do something for dinner, but I have enough food at home, like actual food at home, not like when your mother says, we have food at home, and you come home and there's barely any lunch meat left. Anyway, gotta get ready for the acting class from 6:30 to 8. Gotta have my post-workout snacks, and I gotta redo that slate I did because I didn't read the instructions for this slate properly, which was dumb on my part. I should have paid better attention. But anyway, I'm gonna enjoy my day off, do my acting class, redo my slate, and get everything taken care of. I'll catch you guys later on. Peace. Again. Do you guys think I should get some American Chicken Bunker? So, for whatever reason, I was thinking about fantasy today. I don't know why, but it was just coming to mind. The genre, of course, not my thoughts about. But anyway, that's not a Christian joke. We're going to move on from that. Fantasy is just really cool, in my opinion, because you can do almost anything you want with it. Now, there still have to be rules.
There's one rule!
And the thing is that fantasy and sci-fi tend to get collided with each other. I think that's more so to save with shelf space. But there's some fantasy science fiction too. Like, for example, it's called, what was that one movie that came out a couple years ago? It was made by the dude who, I can't remember the name of it, but there's also shows like Stargate.
Isn't that hot?
Extremely.
Which is fantasy meets military science fiction. And just the open-endedness of what you can do with fantasy is outstanding. Like, you got the classics like Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Rings, underrated films like Crawl, Highlander, things like that. Oh, I love Highlander, my friends. Highlander is one of the coolest movies ever made, and not enough people talk about it anymore. I think that's to do with the sequels being kind of, even though, controversial opinion, I love Highlander 2, The Quickening.
The Highlander.
Right. Wilson, could we get on the Highlander thing as soon as possible?
The original cut, not the extended cut. That actually makes it more tie-in to the original film. Just the bonkers nature of Highlander 2. I love it. I can't get enough of Highlander 2. It is just so much fun to watch. I watched that with my one roommate a while ago, and we adored that movie. I like the original, the extended cut is cool too, but that, like I said, how bonkers they were willing to get with it, even though the making them aliens was silly as heck. But Lord of the Rings is one of those things that it hit it out of the park right out of the gate with its first book, The Hobbit, and then when you had the actual trilogy of Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return. Man. Maybe it's because I'm nostalgic for it, because those were my bedtime stories when I was a little kid. But they were just so cool. And then you get to see the movies. I even like the animated movies too, but still to this day, I don't think anything reached the level of pure epic that those three movies hit. There's been spectacular movies, don't get me wrong, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy is like the pinnacle of pure epic, and it just still hasn't been matched. There's some caveats, obviously, like the Avengers movies, Pacific Rim, Godzilla -1, things like that. But how like grand the scale of those three movies were. And they did them in like, they shot them all at once, I think. And a lot of it comes down to they had to use a lot of real stuff in those movies. Like obviously, a lot of that is CGI, but how much of that was actually stuff they had and not just continuous green screen. The acting, the writing, the music of Lord of the Rings. That's why they have screenings that that are like orchestrated for the entire trilogy. Man, I gotta see that. My one friend from church, she got a chance to see that, the trilogy with the orchestra. That is just so unbelievably cool. And Conan the Barbarian actually predates Lord of the Rings. But it's a different type of fantasy. It's sword and sorcery, or sword and sandals. I kind of sometimes call it prehistoric fantasy, because it takes more like, not so much dragons and more so like dinosaurs and things like that. One movie I actually adore, that is, it's a blatant Conan the Barbarian ripoff. It's called Your Hunter from the Future. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but somewhere on that shelf. I didn't bother trying to look for it because it'd take me forever to find it. I have that on Blu-ray, and I love Your Hunter from the Future. If you can find a way to watch it immediately. I'm not sure if someone illegally uploaded it to YouTube or if it's on Tubi, but like I said, I already own the movie, so I'd have to, like I said, also look for it, but I can watch it whenever I want. There is also Solomon Kane, man. Solomon Kane, I think, is one of the most underappreciated of all fantasy. Now, I don't know if you ever played the game Greedfall, but Greedfall is definitely a lot like the Dream Solomon Kane experience, at least in gaming. I don't think there's ever been an actual Solomon Kane game. There's been a movie, which was okay. That was actually a good movie. Very underrated. I think that's on Amazon, maybe. Definitely give that a look. Solomon Kane needs to be talked about more, because obviously Conan the Barbarian, that's popular because it was one of the first big movies of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that has history behind it. And Solomon Kane was, I believe that was his first fantasy. And like, if it wasn't for Solomon Kane, there'd be no Conan the Barbarian, and without Conan the Barbarian, there probably would be no Lord of the Rings. Even though Lord of the Rings, I am well aware that a lot of that was tied into, you know, him being friends with C.S. Lewis and the Chronicles of Narnia, which, again, that's another series. Like, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, those two men, their stories were just outstanding. Like, definitely part of the big four of fantasy. Like, and there's no debate about that. The debate stops and ends there. If there's a big four of fantasy, it's J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and Robert E. Howard. Who's the fourth? Maybe George R.R. Martin, but I never read Game of Thrones. So I can't give a solid opinion on that. My cousin loves Game of Thrones. Some people might say J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. Or maybe, I don't know who wrote Percy Jackson. But that's young adult stuff more so than it is fantasy. It's obviously fantasy, but it's more tied into the young adult fan base than it is the overall fantasy fan base. What a sentence. But Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia are definitely two of the most important pieces of fiction ever written. They're basically the most important pieces of fantasy of all time. That, and obviously Conan the Barbarian, because Conan the Barbarian, it was a huge inspiration on Dungeons and Dragons, which was a huge inspiration for video games and role-playing games. Sort of like how I say Starship Troopers is the most influential piece of science fiction of all time. Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, those three are the most influential pieces of fantasy of all time, without question. And yes, I will look for any reason to talk about Starship Troopers, because it's my favorite book. Starship Troopers. I will say this, they're not wearing their power armor on the cover. They're more looking like the mobile infantry from the movie, which is fine, because people know the movie more than they do the book, even though I would like to see them in cute little suits of ape armor. The controversial classic of military adventure. Indeed it is. But I think the one thing that's missing from fantasy is there's not a lot of fantasy horror. I mean, there's horror that takes place in like a kind of fantasy world where it's like predates our modern era, you know, stories like Frankenstein, Dracula, things like that. But how many movies are fantasy with horror? I think that's because horror is kind of a thing that connects to our reality. So it's not based around our time or what we're actually going through. A lot of people might struggle to find scary. So that'd be a good experiment for people to work on, is have a horror story that is set in a medieval fantasy. Why not? There's science fiction horror, there's modern horror, and like I said, there's horror that takes place in times that is before our modern era, you know, like I said, Dracula, Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. But never in, like, at least not that come to mind. So my camera decided to just crap out on me last second. But there's one movie called The Black Death, which is more action horror that takes place in a medieval setting. And there's another one called The Headhunter, which is an okay movie. It has one of those, of course, they're going to pull that unhappy endings, which annoyed me because it's like, you don't need to keep doing that. You can just have a satisfying end. You can have a happy ending for a horror movie. Mind-boggling, I know. And it would have functioned better if it was kind of more like Medieval Predator than the movie they actually made, because it is mostly a one-man show. The acting in it is great, but it's not really like, if you're not into that type of thing, most people will find it pretty boring. It's definitely more, you can tell the budget was really constrained. So I give them credit for trying. Now, again, without fantasy, my friends, there'd be no Poultrygeist Night of the Chicken Dead. Do you want to live in that world? Do you want to live in a world without Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead? I don't. And that's why fantasy is important, because if it wasn't for stories like Lord of the Rings, Conan the Barbarian, which fits gonzo violence, and the world building of Chronicles of Narnia, there'd be no movies like Poultrygeist. And that's not fun for me. I love movies like Poultrygeist. And I love fantasy. Even science fiction stories like Dune, huge inspiration from Lord of the Rings. The world building that's another example of science fiction fantasy, where it takes place in the far off future, but the world they inhabit in Dune is more so kind of like a cool cross between science fiction, Conan the Barbarian, and a little bit of Lord of the Rings. The epicness of Lord of the Rings, because Conan the Barbarians was more cereals, not the breakfast food. And check this, if you can find these book series, it's called the Lunar Trilogy. Spectacular. In the movie too, outstanding movie. And it is probably one of the most underrated pieces of science fiction fantasy of all time. But make sure you are, and I can hear it in the background, Star Wars, huge inspiration when it comes to fantasy. It's another crossover between fantasy and science fiction. There are some people who might even say that Star Wars is more fantasy than science fiction. Technically, it takes place before we even exist. What's the opening title of Star Wars? A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Like I said, fantasy is important because I think it's something we all need. Of course, we have to live in reality, but sometimes it helps being lost in a fantasy.